Hey guys, it's Lockie here, and you have tuned in to another episode of the Coast Watch Football Podcast. It's the weekly show where we chat everything across the A-League, as well as my team, the Central Coast Mariners, and we are just over 2 weeks away from the kickoff of the A-League season, which is very exciting. So in this episode, we are going to be doing a deep dive into all of the ins and outs across all A-League clubs from this past pre-season, and I'm also going to be giving a rating to each of the teams, in my opinion, how they have performed in terms of bringing in players and maybe players they've lost as well. There's been plenty of movement across the squads in the A-League this season, so a lot to dive into. But off the top of the episode, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you for everyone who's been engaging with the content. We've been doing live streams across Instagram and TikTok, just chatting A-League, just really casual stuff, and great to see you guys hanging out with me in those. So keep an eye on those platforms for more live streams coming up. There'll be some live streams coming here on YouTube as well, so make sure you stay subscribed on YouTube. And we also had some new videos drop recently. We did a video on the 5 reasons to be excited about the A-League this season, which was a really, really fun one to do. And shout out to the A-League's official Instagram page who actually shared that on their story, which I greatly appreciate. And we also did the season finale of the FIFA 22 Central Coast Mariners career mode. We've been playing as the Mariners through a full career mode series, and it's been quite dramatic. There's 6 episodes. It's out right now. I'll make sure to link that video, that series up the top as well, if you want to check out the Mariners career mode series. But yeah, that season finale last week was quite a dramatic one. I'll just say that. And that actually segues nicely into my next little mini announcement, which is that Coast Watch Football is now expanding even further to Twitch. We're going to be on Twitch, and Twitch is where we're going to be doing mainly gameplay stuff. So when it comes to the FIFA stuff, playing as A-League teams and just general gameplay, that's going to be over on the Twitch channel. So I'll make sure to leave that linked down in the description if you want to go ahead and follow the Twitch page. Keep an eye out for some live streams coming there real soon. But guys, let's jump into the news right now. And again, there's so much exciting stuff happening. And I know I've said it, but like in these weeks leading up to the A-League, it's just going to get more and more exciting. I think there's going to be more and more announcements coming in the coming days and weeks as we inch closer and closer to the kickoff of the 2021-22 season. And of course, the big story, it's the one that dropped last Friday. The full fixture list for the upcoming season was released. And to be honest, I didn't even expect it to be released. I thought maybe they would have just, played out the 6 rounds or go through, at least a few of the rounds before sort of announcing the next sort of batch of fixtures. But they just went out and announced the full thing. So I'm not complaining. But the biggest story from the fixture announcement is the new revamped finals series. And the changes, it's been extended from 3 weeks to 4 weeks. There's going to be a 2-legged home and away tie for the semi-finals. So first week is the same as it has always been these last few years. The elimination finals are just single leg ties. So third plays 6th, fourth plays 5th. And then the winners of those games go on into a 2-legged series with the teams who have finished first and second. And I like this. I like this change. Overall, from the reaction from the fans seems pretty positive, I think, overall from what I've seen. It just builds that excitement. It's something that we did have in the A-League previously. Several years ago, we had that the 2-legged thing. And I think the good thing is that it gives much more opportunity for the teams that finished between 3rd and 6th to make it to the grand final. Think about last season when the semi-finals were Melbourne City and Macarthur and Sydney FC and Adelaide. You just felt like, especially with a home advantage, which is huge in the final series, Sydney FC and Melbourne City were just like guaranteed just those grand final spots. Watching it just wasn't that exciting. Watching the elimination finals were exciting because last season, the teams between 3rd and 6th, including my Mariners, were reasonably balanced, but you felt like those top 2 sides were just like so far ahead. So this is going to balance it out because it means that the teams who have one of those elimination finals get to have a home semi-final. Just really balances it out, and I think it's going to make for a really exciting final series. Some other news across the fixture release, of course, the Mariners have finally locked in Central Coast Stadium, of course, from when those initial first 6 fixtures were announced a while back. there was a little bit of concern that Mariners hadn't locked in Central Coast Stadium, and there was issues regarding Central Coast Council and locking in the stadium. That has been sorted out now. However, the first game will be played on round 4 against Sydney FC. That is December 12th. Originally, round 2 against Wellington Phoenix was scheduled to be at home, but that's going to be played down in Wollongong, which segues nicely into the next piece of news, which is Wellington Phoenix will play the first couple months down there in Wollongong at Wynn Stadium as they did last season. But the aim is to get back to New Zealand by January, which is exciting for Phoenix fans who Wellington only played 2 games in New Zealand last season. Those 2 epic games where they got massive crowds. And, it's going to be hopefully for Phoenix fans just as exciting when they do finally, hopefully, fingers crossed, return in January. And it's a similar story as well for Perth Glory. And there's a number of sides who have a bit of a rough run in terms of long trips away from home, and Perth Glory is one of them. They play the opening round against Adelaide United at home, and potentially that might be the first appearance for Daniel Sturridge. But after that, they have an extended run away from home. Their next home game isn't until January, and again, this is all got to do with border restrictions with Western Australia and everything. So hopefully by January, everything's cool. We'd love to see an A-League season where everything's sort of just back to normal. Everyone's playing at the home stadiums, and just a little bit of normalcy in the league is what we all want, of course. In other news as well, of course, the derbies that have scheduled for round 1. There has been 75% capacity announced for both the Sydney Derby and the F3 Derby. Tickets are on sale now for the Sydney Derby, which is scheduled to be played at CommBank Stadium. So I think 75%, I think they said is just over 22,000, which is still a really solid number. And hopefully, I reckon they'll sell that one out. And at the F3 Derby, up there in Newcastle, McDonald Jones Stadium, tickets go on sale this Friday. That is this Friday from when you are watching this podcast. So potentially, if you are watching a few days late, the tickets might be on sale right now. So 75% capacity for both of those. And then it's looking like, I think they're saying by December, we should be seeing 100%. Yeah, so again, hopefully we get back to normal with all of that. Let's jump into some transfer news for you right now. So much to talk about. And we are going to, first of all, talk about maybe the most anticipated signing in the A-League this year. And I don't know, maybe I'm just saying that because I'm a Mariners supporter. Certainly for the Mariners, this is the most anticipated one. But Mateus Moresh has signed for the Mariners. He is a Brazilian striker, 23 years of age. And it's a really exciting signing for the Coast, considering his age and considering recently he was playing in Singapore, got a club called Geylang International, and he scored 11 goals in 21 games. And it's not often that you see a relatively young player from overseas come to the A-League. Usually the foreign players that we bring in are, in their 30s, to be honest. So a lot of promise around Mateus Moresh, and he's really going to round out this Mariners attack. We've got plenty of depth now in attack, the Central Coast. So, again, I keep saying it. I think we're still lacking that defensive midfielder. We're still looking a bit thin in the middle of the park, but still, I think that depth up top is very, very nice to see. Of some other, of course, not much play movement in this past week as it has been getting finalised, but Philip Curto has signed with Macarthur, the former Western United keeper, 30 years of age he is now. And this, of course, they needed to sign someone in quickly after Adam Federici, of course, retired last week. And this signing makes sense. Philip Curto sort of, he wasn't really playing much. Didn't really get much game time after Ryan Scott sort of took his place at Western United last year. And of course, Jamie Young has now come in. So the goalkeeping department of Western United was really, filled up there. So Philip Curto makes sense for him to sign for Macarthur FC. And we imagine he'll be the starting keeper down there at the Bulls. And as well, former Melbourne Victory, Western Sydney Wanderer, and Melbourne City defender Daniel Georgievski has announced his retirement from football. And of course, he's been quite a notable name in the A-League for many years now. Was involved with that Melbourne Victory Championship winning side as well. And of course, one of the big news stories from the past week was Josh Cavallo, Adelaide United defender, coming out publicly announcing that he is gay. And it was so great to see such a the overwhelming support from not just Australian football, but the world of football as well. There were like some huge players that were retweeting and sharing the story, which was great to see as well. And, from that announcement video, you could tell from Josh that like a massive weight had come off his shoulders and just a smile on his face. Like player well-being comes first, always. And I'm sure Josh's story will be an inspiration for plenty other people as well. All right, we are going to jump in right now, though, to our ins and outs, diving into all of the player movement from across the A-League. And we are going to be doing this in alphabetical order, of course, starting with Adelaide United. If you do want to jump to your team, I'll make sure to leave some timestamps down in the description if you do want to just jump straight ahead to your team and hear what I have to say about them. So let's kick off with Adelaide United, first of all, though. Some of the big players that they have brought in include Nick Ansell, Isaias, of course, back in the A-League as well, George Blackwood and Jacob Tratt. Some more names added to the team. And a couple big players leaving the club as well in Ryan Strain and Jordan Elsey, Tommy Urich as well. So not too much player movement at Adelaide, but I think, especially Ryan Strain and Jordan Elsey have been two key players for the Reds for the past few years. When you look at the way that the team is lining up for the Reds, and we have seen them play a little bit, of course, in the FFA Cup, I feel like maybe they're just still lacking that quality. The striker situation is something that is still a bit of concern for the Reds. Tommy Urich, was decent last season. He scored 9 goals across 18 games. But, replacing him with George Blackwood, Blackwood has been a striker who's just been just a bit inconsistent. I think he's been a player who has always had potential, but who knows? Perhaps this is the season where someone like George Blackwood has a big year in the A-League. So for Adelaide United, I'm just going to go a 6 out of 10. I think it's pretty average. I don't think you probably have to say Isaias is probably the biggest name that they've brought in, but I don't know whether he'll have the same impact that he used to. And again, an interesting signing considering that they already are pretty well covered in that position with Joey Coletti, one day, Louis Dorigo in terms of holding midfielders. So now they've got plenty of depth in that position. But so I'm just going to go 6 out of 10 for Adelaide United. Let's shuffle on now to Brisbane Roar, though, and a little bit more play movement here at the Roar. Some of the big names include Nikola Miliuznic, Matty Steinman, Juan Lozano, an Argentine striker. And, these players, of course, some of these names familiar to A-League fans. Miliuznic, formerly of Adelaide United, Matty Steinman used to play at Wellington Phoenix. Strengthening a little bit of squad depth as well with some of the younger players that they've brought in. But I think when you look at their departures, that's where it gets a little bit concerning. They've lost that front three that was really pretty deadly for Brisbane last year. Enrique Danzaki, Joey Championess, and Dylan Wenzel-Hawes have all left the club. And, it's up to these new acquisitions to fill those pretty big boots, especially someone like Ricky Danzaki. I thought he was fantastic last season. A lot of Brisbane fans will be very curious to see how Juan Lozano is going to go. He did grab a goal in the round of 32 in the FA Cup. At the moment, I believe he's injured, so whether he will miss out on round 1 or not, we'll have to wait and see. But again, Brisbane Roar, another team that I think might just drop away this season, just with lacking, again, a little bit of quality across the squad. In terms of depth, they look pretty well covered, but plenty of young players who really have to step up this season if Brisbane Roar are going to have a successful year. I'm going to go I'm just going to go for a 7 out of 10. I think I do like the signings of Matty Steinman and Miliuznic. I think they'll be first-team players for Brisbane this season. I don't think it's too bad. Some of those departures there, though, may be a little bit concerning for Brisbane Roar fans. Let's shuffle on now, of course, to the mighty Central Coast Mariners, and not as much play movement compared to other clubs at the Mariners this year. Probably the biggest name we've brought in, Nikolai Muller, and Storm, of course, back at the club as well. Some new names as well in Cy Goddard and Benny and Kololo. And, these signings, I'm pretty optimistic as a Mariners fan. I think I like, in my opinion, Nikolai Muller is the most high-profile signing we've brought in for many years. I don't think, had we not had the success we had last season, maybe we wouldn't have been able to attract a player like Nikolai Muller. And he'll be a great acquisition for the club, I reckon. But obviously, in terms of departures, first of all, you have to talk about Alan Stajic. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how Nick Montgomery goes in his first season in charge. But some key first team players have left the club in Danny De Silva, Jack Clisby, Alu Kowal, Stefan Nigro, Gianni Stensness. And, well, I'll tell you what, Alu Kowal is the interesting one because he wasn't necessarily a first-team player, I guess. He was the bench player. He was an impact player, but obviously had a massive impact on the team, scoring a bunch of goals. For the Mariners, I'm going to go a 7 out of 10. I think Overall, it's relatively the same team. You still got Mark Birigidi in goals, Kai Rolls and Ruan Tongic in defence. Really crucial that we re-signed all of those three players. Ollie Bozanic still there, Marco Rennie and Matty Simon up top. So there's a really strong spine to the team. And I don't think it's too much of a disaster this transfer window for the Mariners. I'm just going to go 7 out of 10. Of course, Mateus Maresh, the final addition, but we'll have to wait and see how he goes settling into the A-League. This is a real interesting one. So Macarthur, for me, have really just brought in a whole bunch of first-team players. They're basically it's going to be a new-look first team in a way for Macarthur FC this year. Mooney Najjar has completed a permanent deal after being on loan last season from Melbourne City, but the big names include Ulysses De Vere, Danny De Silva, Craig Noon, Tommy Uskok, Tommy Urich. These players, I reckon, will all be in the starting 11 come round one. Jordan Much has also joined the club, Al Hassan Toure, and of course, new keeper, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, Philip Curto. So, big names. When you look at some of the other teams and the players that they brought in, some especially Brisbane, some younger players, but Macarthur, these are all big gun players that they've brought in. And when you look at the departures, it's clear to see why they had to bring in plenty of quality. Mark Milligan and Benyat both retiring. Susayata as well retiring. They've lost Ivan Franic and Loic Puyo. And, big departures as well in Matty Dubshire and Adam Federici, Danny Genre as well. So a lot of names have left Macarthur after that inaugural season. But in my opinion, they've strengthened really, really well. De Vere picked up the Johnny Warren medal last season, and Danny De Silva and Craig Noon, both wingers who had great seasons last year at their clubs as well, Melbourne City and the Mariners respectively. Same thing with Tommy Uskok. I think Tommy Uskok is a really underrated player and can slot in defence or in midfield. For Macarthur, I'm going to go an 8 out of 10. I think they've had a really strong window. Despite losing some big names, they've recruited really, really well. But just because I'm giving them a relatively high score doesn't mean they'll perform this season. It's all about getting those players to gel. So that'll be the concern for Macarthur this year. But no doubt they have the quality in the team. I think with players like that, they will have to finish top 6. Anything below outside top 6 will be a disappointment for Macarthur. So a decent lineup that they're building this year. Let's talk about Melbourne City now. And not much to talk about when it comes to City in terms of play movement. And no surprises because they didn't really have to change much considering the success that they had last season. The big acquisitions include Matthew Leckie and Manuel Bucchiarelli, this Italian midfielder / attacker. And, those guys are straight replacements for of course, Craig Noon, who goes to Macarthur, and as well Adrian Luna, who was sort of a mainstay in that City midfield last season. Melbourne City, for me, look just as strong as they did last season. And again, considering that they have basically an identical squad from last year, Patrick Kuznorba still in charge. I think City will be strong this year. It's a tricky one to rate because it's not like they've signed too many players, but in terms of their departures, they haven't really lost anyone. I think when you have to look at their transfer window, you just have to give them an 8 out of 10. They haven't really done anything wrong. I don't know if you can ever give a side a 10 out of 10, but it's certainly not a poor transfer window at all. No reason to get rid of a whole bunch of players. No reason to bring in a host of players as well. So 8 out of 10, I think, is a fair rating for Melbourne City. Melbourne Victory, and this is where it gets pretty extensive with the next two sides. Melbourne Victory, of course, have gone through a massive rebuild. Some of the big names include Jason Guerrier, Josh Brolante, Jason Davidson, Matty Sporanovic and Economides are linking up once again with Tony Popovich, the new coach who has arrived. And some of the imports they've brought in from overseas include Ray Mashan, Ivan Kalava, Roderick Miranda, and Francesco Magiotta. So, again, the whole starting 11 is going to be a completely new look side for Melbourne Victory this year, and some of their departures. Of course, getting rid of a lot of the players who just didn't perform last season. Rudy Gested, Nick Ansell, Adama Traore. So many names have left the club. So many names have been brought in. So it's a real rebuild happening at Melbourne Victory, and they had to do this after such a poor season last year in the A-League. But in my opinion, the acquisitions are fantastic. And I think, especially with someone like Tony Popovich in charge, for me, he really tops off all those signings as well, bringing in a premiership-winning coach in Tony Popovich. So for me, Melbourne Victory, I'm going to go an 8 out of 10. I really like their transfer window. I really, really like it. A lot of big names in that side. Let's talk about Newcastle Jets right now, and Newcastle Jets have both brought in and lost the most players this season. They have brought in a total of 16 players in this preseason. Some of the big names, including Matty Yerman, Jordan Elsey, of course, in defense, will be joining him, and plenty of new names, plenty of imports that they have brought in. Some of the names I will not attempt to pronounce until we hear Simon Hill pronounce them in commentary. Of course, a reliable source in Simon Hill. But very interested to see how some of these players again go settling into this side. For Newcastle Jets, it's all about gelling those players, and I think Arthur Papas is the right man to do it. We're hearing positive things from Newcastle Jets. We're hearing that there's going to be a new, exciting, attacking brand of football played up there in Newcastle as well. And of course, some of the departures at Jets. Of course, the two central defenders, the veterans, A-League veterans, Nigel Bogard and Nikolai Topper-Stanley, both leaving the club. Striker Roy O'Donovan has also left as well. So a host of names leaving the side there at Newcastle Jets. So again, question marks over how Newcastle are going to go this year. But for me, I'm going to go a 7 out of 10. And, you know, whether those players, it's just because we don't know how these new players are going to go. So many of these foreign players coming in, maybe they'll kill it. Maybe they'll be awesome. Jets fans will be hoping that they will be. I'm just going to go a 7 out of 10. I like that they've brought in a whole bunch of players to rebuild, but question marks in terms of how they will go. They will go. Perth Glory, of course, the big name with Perth Glory, of course, Daniel Sturridge, and but that doesn't guarantee them a 10 out of 10 in their transfer window. But some of the other names include Brandon O'Neill, who I think is a fantastic signing. Keeper Brad Jones will be contesting for the goalkeeper spot alongside Liam Reddy. Adrian Sardinero as well, Spanish midfielder, has joined. And some decent young signings as well. They've brought in Pacifique Nyongabiri and Anthony Burke-Gilroy. So I think for Perth Glory this season, you look at the side that they're building, and again, it's relatively similar. If you look at their departures, Jason Gary has left, Neil Kilkenny left the side, as well as Chris Economides, Nick D'Agostino, and of course the big departure, Diego Castro. So, I mean, some key names leaving there. Not too much of a reshuffle at Perth Glory, though. In my opinion, I think it's looking pretty decent, this side that they're building. I think Diego Castro is a massive loss, though. It's going to be up to someone like, it's looking like Adrian Sardinero, who, from what we have seen, can play as an attacking mid or out as a winger. So potentially filling that void filled by Diego Castro. I think Brandon O'Neill's a really good signing, though. For Perth, I'm going to go an 8 out of 10. An 8 out of 10. I just think the signings of Sturridge, Brandon O'Neill are really massive signings. Those are sort of the big name players that you want to bring in to really give your team a chance to finish at the top. And in terms of departures, the real only sort of consistent starting players, I guess, were Dane Ingham, Kilkenny, and Diego Castro. Economides as well was in and out with injury a little bit last season from memory. So Perth Glory, I'm going to go an 8 out of 10. Not too bad for them. Sydney FC, again, another one of those sides who probably didn't really have to make too many changes this past off-season. I do like the players that they have brought in, though. Max Burgess, Elvis Campsober, Connor O'Toole, James Donachie as well. And again, the real only departures that they've had, the big ones, Alex Baum-Johan, Ryan McGowan, those are the two sort of key players that they lost from last season. A couple of young players leaving the squad as well. Looks like James Donachie is going to slot in there to replace McGowan. And I think with Sydney FC, they're an aging squad. Some of the players getting older in Bobo, Lafondra, Ninkovic, and they needed some of these, I guess, relatively younger players in Burgess, O'Toole, and Campsober to add a bit of, a different dynamic to the Sydney FC side. So for them, again, I'm going to go an 8 out of 10. I think that's a really solid window for Sydney FC. Again, didn't have to change too much. But I really like these players that they have brought in and have managed to keep a hold of plenty of their top quality players, which is good signs at Sydney FC. So another solid window there for Sydney FC. It is a different story, however, for a team in Wellington Phoenix who have lost a host of key players. Cam Devlin, of course, Tom Ahmed, Stephen Taylor retiring, and of course, topped off Ulysses Davia, the Johnny Warren medal-winning player, joining Macarthur FC. They have brought in Gary Hooper, who is back at the side, Nicholas Pennington, who has a dual citizenship with Australia and Italy. It'll be interesting to see how he goes slotting into midfield. But this Phoenix side, man, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. It's just, I feel for them because the situation isn't easy with them having to play the first couple of months away from New Zealand. And then, some of the players that they'll be bringing in haven't even been to New Zealand and wouldn't have experienced those crowds over there. So Wellington Phoenix, this is a poor window for them, considering the big names that they've lost and they haven't really strengthened with the same level of quality. I'm going to go for a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. So it's worrying signs for Phoenix. Could be wrong. I think Ufuk Talay is a great coach and maybe he'll get the best out of this side. Some decent young players in that Phoenix side as well. So happy to be wrong. But on paper, it's not looking good. We're just going to go for a 5 out of 10. Pretty average. Western Sydney Wanderers. This is the one that I really like. Okay, so with Western Sydney Wanderers, they're sort of my hot take for this season. I think Wanderers are going to do really, really well. And it's because of the players that they brought in. Tom Mohamed, Dimitri Petratos, Terry Antonis, Reece Williams, Keijiro Ogawa, this Japanese player as well. Thomas Mayas, the new Spanish goalkeeper. These are, I think, are all big-name players who, either new to the A-League or have shown quality at A-League level. I think these are the signings to help Wanderers push back into the finals this season. And especially, I really love the signing of Dimitri Petratos, topped the league in assists a couple of years ago. I think he'll have a huge season at Western Sydney this year. In terms of their departures, not too many huge names. Mitch Duke, Simon Cox have left the club. Bruce Kamau as well. Nikolai Muller, of course, joining the Mariners. Dylan McGowan. But when you look at their team that they're building now and the players that they already have for the squad, it's really solid. It's really, really strong. And they've got a good mix of youth and experience as well. And they've plenty of depth as well. And also talk of Jack Rodwell, English midfielder, coming to the side as well. Plenty of depth in that Western Sydney Wanderers squad. For Wanderers, I'm going to go for a 9 out of 10. I know that might be bold, but I really like some of the signings there. I think when you look at that side, they've just almost had it, the Western Sydney Wanderers. For the past few years, they've just been inconsistent. They've looked really good at times, and then they have dropped the ball at times and fallen away. And that's been the story for them these past few seasons, just missing out in finals. But I really like the way that this Wanderers side is lining up on paper. So I'm going to go a 9 out of 10, which I know might be bold, but I don't know. Interested to hear what you guys think about that Western Sydney Wanderers lineup. Western United are the final team to talk about. And I like some of the acquisitions they've brought in Western United. Dylan Wenzel-Halls, Alexander Prijovic as well, Rennie Corinne, Leo Lacroix, some of the international players that they have brought in from overseas, and some experience as well. Jamie Young, Neil Kilkenny, Nikolai Topper-Stanley. It's a solid lineup. And, some of the decent players that they have there already in Connor Payne, Lockie Wales. I think it's a fairly balanced lineup for Western United this season. Slight concern over losing some key players in Andrew Durante, Besart Berisha, Victor Sanchez, Tommy Uskok. These players were key players for them last season. But to be fair, overall as a squad, they didn't quite perform at a high enough standard for a consistent period of time across the season. For Western United, I'm going to go 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. I think that's a safe rating. I think for them, it's all about those foreigners that have come in. I think Prijovic looks like a pretty decent signing. Could be the man to replace Besart Berisha as their main goal-scoring striker. But I'm sure someone like Dylan Wenzel-Halls will be keen to be starting as well. So, very interested to see how Western United line up, of course, under John Aloisi now. But some decent signings. So would love to hear what you guys think of some of those ratings. Overall, really positive. And I chatted about that in my 5 reasons to be excited about the A-League season video, that all the squads have quality. So overall, it's looking really, really good. Hence my ratings, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, relatively high. Again, it's Wellington Phoenix, who I think have just dropped away this year. Hopefully, maybe they'll bring in a couple more quality players this year. But that's my take on the A-League transfers for this season. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out here on the podcast. I do appreciate your time. Of course, the podcast here dropping every single Tuesday across YouTube and all of the podcast platforms. That includes Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And of course, make sure you stay following to all of the platforms across the Coast Watch Football socials. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of them, man. Just get across and just follow all of them. I do appreciate it a lot. And of course, everything will be linked down in the description if you want to check out any of those things. Once again, guys, thank you so much. The A-League is just around the corner. I'll see you next week.